you want me to drop some bags on those seats there?
Yes, that'd be lovely, thank you.
Well, if you want me, you need me to be done by 1:45, don't you? Ready?
No naughty pictures at all.
Oh yeah, there are actually. Yeah. It's proper irreverent.
I thought it was going to be boring. Right, shall I?
Yeah,
shall I
go
start?
ahead.
Give you a quick introduction. Yep. You okay, Tom? Can we go?
Okay, hello, good morning everybody. My name's Damien McAlonan. I'm from Academy class, and I hope you've enjoyed your orienteering for this morning. Remember that screen 1 is A, screen 2 is B, screen 3 is C, D, and all the rest of it. Can I ask everyone, as a show of hands, who's actually taken an Academy class course? Boom. That's good. Okay, thank you very much. Well, we've got a very fun-packed day today. We're moving a little bit ahead of the schedule. So, in fact, we're running about 15 minutes late. So if you look at the actual time on your agenda, just consider 15 minutes ahead, and that's when everything's going to start, okay? Just to draw yourself to our 25% discount for all courses, okay? Don't forget that. And does anyone have any questions before they move to their respective rooms? No? Could I ask you to do a favour then? Can you look to the person to the left of you and say, I'm really excited? Okay, can you look at the person to the right of you and say, this is going to be great, one of the best days of my life? Wow, passion, creative people, passion. Fabulous. Okay, listen, if you need any kind of answers to anything, there are people with the Designers Fiesta black t-shirts. If you do work for an agency, make sure that you have taken a picture of me and that you tweet it so they know that you're not in bed already, okay? And if you'd like to all move to your respective rooms, this one here is going to be by this fabulous man, so I'm sure not a lot of people are going to move. And I'll be giving a brief introduction to exactly who this is in just a moment.
I think you've asked it to move. I've got a whole load of stuff to show you. Oh, beforehand, yeah.
Oh, sorry, disorganised. He wants to show you some stuff.
Yeah. Man, I am so sorry. Right. Anyway, Winnie, morning. Not nowhere near loud enough. You can have two better than that. Oh, and a delay. This morning going up. Anyway, morning. I am Tony Harmer. Some of you know me already. A specialist solutions consultant at Adobe UK. And I am very pleased to be here at this Designers Fiesta again. There's not many places will have me back a second time, to be fair. Well, they sometimes a second time because that's to apologise for the first time, of course, which is a really old and hackneyed joke, but anyway, not to worry, and hackneyed itself is a pun. But I've been doing this pretty much since the inception. I think I only missed 1 year when I was working in the US and couldn't be here at that time, but it's good to be with you. And of course, this is all about learning. This is about discovery, finding out new things. It's about learning more about the things you do know about, and it's about connecting with the people that you're sat here near with this room with, and hopefully having a drink with them later on and having a nice little chat and finding out more about each other. From my side, on the Adobe tools, because there are other tools being represented here today as well, of course, but from the Adobe tools side, what I really wanted to impart to you, because I only have like 5 minutes to do this to allow you time to get to your next rooms, is for you to think more, not about what you know already in terms of tools, but stretch yourself. Because if you have Creative Cloud, then you have access to a whole bunch of other tools as well, and you should explore them. So if, for example, you know Illustrator, there's nothing to stop you, right, learning a bit more about something else like After Effects and using something like that. There's nothing to stop you getting up and starting to draw at 5 o'clock in the morning, as you can see here, if I just zoom in on this. So I drew this at 05:58, which is when that was last modified, and created just a little bit ahead of that, this poo emoji. Just here, right? So I could draw this nice poo emoji because of all the things that have happened with Apple on Tuesday, the number one thing you're seeing in terms of images is an animated poo emoji on social networks. So I thought, well, that's quite important, so I'll do one of those. And so I do that at 5 o'clock this morning, and at 6 o'clock this morning, around that sort of time. And then what I do is, this is my Design Ninja alter ego, who some of you may know, and I bring things like that into Character Animator, which then tracks my face and allows me to move a character. And when I speak, you can see that it's mapping my mouth movements here. So I do my poo emoji, and I switch off the Design Ninja and decide to actually bring the poo emoji in and give it life, all in the space of a morning. So here we are with the Designers Fiesta, and of course the poo's going to get its own voice when it's, oh, signal error, nice, liking that, that's hilarious. Okay, the poo emoji was functioning perfectly well earlier on. Why have you stopped working, poo emoji? Let me just find out. There is a proper, I know why now, it's because I imported it from another location. So what I'll do is, I'll just take that back out to where it was. That should fix that broken link. There is the poo emoji. Phew, disaster averted. And now I can turn on the tracking for the poo emoji. And it should, once I make it active, then become me.
So, remember, you're here for Designers Fiesta, and what you should do is learn, connect, discover, and least of all, most of all, don't be shit. See you later.
Go to your things, have a really great day, and I hope you enjoy it. Thank you. All right. Yeah, no, sorry, it dropped me on the back foot all of a sudden. I thought, don't worry. Yeah, help yourself. Whatever's there, it's good. Huh? Oh no, they're all they're different things. This is the UX doohickey, so. Where did my thing go? Can I nick your program? I am in the right room, aren't I? Yeah. Yeah, cool. That's good. Come on then. You look fabulous.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
That was great.
I literally did do that this morning. Got up and thought, yeah, why not?
Yeah, absolutely. Great to see you. I'm just going to go up so I can actually...
Yeah, go. Right then. We've got a couple of minutes yet. All a long way away. Can you all hear all right? Well, I dare say you can hear all right. I don't actually need this. I've kind of got enough capacity in here to kind of boom out. We can start a little bit early, I guess. Mind you, is that fair on people that are making their way here? Or we could just chat for a bit. Any questions about anything for the next 4 minutes? Still awake? Dave, could you go up and take all their pulses, please? Just make sure they're all right. No? Nothing? No immediate questions? Who are you? What are you doing here? Why are you here? No? I don't know. Sometimes I'm Batman. Other times I'm a
Pull emoji.
That's going to be my new favourite, that is, I think. We ought to do that on our... we ought to do it all the time. We ought to give the poo emoji its own YouTube channel. Yeah, and so it just says everything's shit. It'd be great. Yeah, that's good. That's fine. Just reminding me that I'm broadcasting that to Facebook. That's really good. Right, so... Diddly. Say again? Have you? Nice one. What, you're doing it now, or you did it? Yeah, this is actually being streamed now anyway, in here. So we're there. So that's why I was just reminded to watch my P's and Q's. So.
To be fair, when you had the signal output, you did very well not to say the obvious about the cool emoji, the obvious reaction.
Oh, but I did at the end, though.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so worry not. I got that... Yeah, the intro's done. That's it. We're starting in 2. See, I'm glad I waited now. It's going to start. That's picking that up quite well, actually. Picking up the vibration of the table. Sorry? Facebook? No?
It's on Academy Plus.
Aha, there you go. 1 minute. How many of you in here work in UX at the moment, currently? Okay. How many of you want to work in UX? Cool, that's good. You're definitely in the right place. This would be dreadful if you wanted to be a textile designer. It'd be like the worst 45 minutes of your life. How many of you work in UI? Okay, cool. Good, good, good. We're about good? 30 seconds. Yeah. Not all of them are. This one is. This one's going out live and it will be available afterwards. All of the other things that take place in this screen, I think you're in here, Cam's in here all day. Yeah. So all of the ones in this screen. I have to leave this screen after this one because the rest of my content is protected, so it can't be broadcast, so I have to move from here. But this one's just fine.
On Academy Plus, that's right. You could all add yourselves to @Academy Plus on Facebook, and you can find them all there. Please do like and share that page and our feed today.
I didn't have to press anything for that. It was amazing. We need to get him in our podcast studio. Which go to the link. You. Fabulous. Anyway, right. Thank you. For those of you that haven't met me before or weren't here for the opening 5 minute thingy of people suddenly getting up and then sitting back down again, I am Tony Harmer, a specialist solutions consultant at Adobe UK, and I'm here to talk about UI, UX, and more importantly, Adobe XD. So I am really I'm not even going to bother going into Photoshop for part of this, because I'm going to stick with Illustrator just to start off with. Because people build things in all sorts of different tools. People use Sketch, people use Keynote, people use Photoshop, people use Illustrator, all sorts of things. And very few, if any, of those things were actually ever built for UI or UX work. They were built to do entirely other things. Photoshop, of course, was built almost 30 years ago, yeah, and the intention of modifying, adapting, and improving imagery, and then became a platform and a way for people to make imagery. So it went from adjusting imagery to creating it, and then, as you probably know, has broadened out into all different sorts of areas. One of which, as the term came into use and as the demand for it came into use, became UX, but never designed to do that work. Illustrator, 31 years old, similar story really, designed for you to create illustrations, the clue being in the name, of course, and has developed to do lots and lots of other things. People use it in UI work and people use it to create UX in here, but never designed to do that thing. People use it, however, it is a valid component of a UX workflow because it's very, very sophisticated and can achieve, with vectors, some really, really amazing effects. Once you've got something, some people work in Illustrator and then move it across into Photoshop and then add finesse to it in Photoshop. Largely unnecessary, by the way, in an awful lot of cases if you're not actually using raster imagery. But that kind of defeats the object, because if what we're aiming at is that whole multi-screen environment where we need things that can adapt to those environments, and of course vectors are the perfect thing for that. The minute you move them into Photoshop, you lose all of that stuff, and then you're into a renditions-based workflow where you've got to do things. And typically, of course, people have to do those things anyway, because that's what clients dictate. So Illustrator does have a couple of features, just before I move into XD, Illustrator does have a couple of features that can help you out that I'd like to point out. You're okay, it's cool, come on in. that I'd like to point out to you, show you, because you may well have missed them. Yeah? One thing in particular, actually, is that if I don't get to show you anything else, this will be the one thing I will show you. So I'm using one of the sticker sheets from Google Material here, which if you're working in UX already, you'll be very, very familiar with this. The fact that they make a sticker sheet for Illustrator shows that even Google use it, and actually I know they do use it. So, well, certainly the people I met at awards from Google, they use it anyway. But so here's the thing that you've probably missed, and it's one simple panel, and it's this, Asset Export. Have you come across this panel? Can you show me your hands if you have? Yeah, that's not too bad, actually. Yeah, that's you know, more than half a dozen, which is really, really good, because in a lot of places I go to, they don't know that this exists, and their typical workflow when they want to export an asset is to isolate it out onto its own artboard, potentially, and then invoke Save for Web, which we've called now a legacy feature. Not entirely super happy with that. It's going to do the whole artboard. That's why it's taking just a moment there. It didn't matter about the selection. In fact, I can stop that going from there. But they do that, they export that out, and then they create other artboards for all of the other things and rinse and repeat that workflow. Not very flexible, not very dynamic. Photoshop has a similar mechanism, and Photoshop also has something called the generator, which when you enable the generator can export layers and groups of layers dynamically as you work on them. So you don't have to give it any further instructions. Once you've built out the layers you're going to be working on, you simply enable the generator, and the generator takes care of everything else, and it just keeps on generating the assets. If you've got a layer, for example, that is red and has an inner glow, and you take away the inner glow, it instantly re-renders the graphics that you're using from that. Works very, very quickly. And asset export works in a similar way. You can get asset export to work, if I just bring it out into the sort of center of your field of vision, you can get it to work with entire artboards, yeah, or you can bring it in at an asset level. And coming along shortly, there's going to be the powers of this particular panel are going to be extended. You can see that I just dragged in that artwork there. So just this button with this effect. So part of material is that nothing intersects, everything is on layers, as if you'd actually built it out of paper. So when you've got things that are active, for example, you change the amount of glow under them, which brings them towards you in the Z-index. If you've not looked into it, material is a lovely, lovely concept and thoroughly, thoroughly thought out. But I've dragged that into there, and of course the only thing I'd have to do here would be to name this, so I'm just going to call that one plus just for now, and then I'll bring in this asset here, and I'll just bring in a few different things there like so. And you can see that underneath here, right, I've got the different ways that I can render this out. So I can save it as any one of these preset formats, and you can change that. Obviously, the number next to the JPEG is the quality setting that you can use along with that. But you can see SVG and PDF, because, of course, iOS 11 has a predilection towards PDF. So if you're putting stuff out, that's the preferred format for it. Pretty much the same way as the Apple operating system works. That works with a series of PDFs. InDesign, same thing. InDesign's made up of about 2,700 27,000 different PDFs in there that actually bring that interface together. So it's good architecture for doing that. So I can set that up, and I can add scale rendition. So of course I'd go for SVG first, and then perhaps I'd add a 1x scale and whatever down there in the different rasterized formats. That's a bit long-winded if all you want to do is output for one operating system, so I could click here for iOS, and you can see it does everything for me. It does me a 1, 2, and 3 times scaling for Retina, and it also gives me an SVG there as well, and there's nothing to stop me adding on the PDF for iOS 11. Android, because you've got about 5 different scalings there, because it works on a different system of SP instead of DIP and DP in there. There's a whole article on that you can find. Just search the term, what is SP unit, and you'll find all of that decoded for you. And from there, you just hit export. Now, up to that point, that is no different to Save for Web, apart from I can do 3 things at once there. But here's where this is important. If I decide I'm going to make a change here, right, I can simply activate that particular piece of content right, and go in here and change it. So if I just isolate this one just for a minute, so drill down into that, and what I'm going to do here is change the colour of this content. So I've got the colour swatches from material here as well. A little bit unclear as to why that's not changing visually. Interesting. In that case, I'll just draw another thing on here. Oh, I know why now, because the layer's locked itself. So let me just add a new layer, and I'll draw a piece of content on there, and I'll add that to the panel as well. Okay, so I'll swap out and do that like that. Okay, so that's in there. If that now changes its colour, you can see that it updates automatically in there, and that's the thing I'm trying to get across to you. Yeah, that save for web workflow is fine if you've got all day to do it. Yeah, but the thing is, you may well have all day to do it, but is that the best use of your time? Yeah, is sitting there just repeatedly invoking save for web profitable for you? I suspect probably not. Is it something that you find rewarding? Again, I suspect probably not. Yeah, so if you've not explored it already, do explore asset export here, because that way you're saving yourself a whole load of time, and when the changes come along, you don't need to fear them, because everything will update, and you just hit export again and it updates the content that you've exported already, just overwrites it completely. But what I really do want to show you is Adobe XD, which, how many of you have seen XD before already? Yeah, so that's pretty good. There's a few of you already. So I'm going to use sort of a pre-baked thing in Blue Peter fashion here, just to show you this. So this is meant to be super, super fast. So unlike all of the things I mentioned earlier, which people have adapted to do their UI and UX work in, this was built from the ground up expressly for that purpose. It is meant to be lightweight. It is meant to be ultra fast. That's why I can pinch and zoom like that, and the rendering of that is instantaneous. You'll notice there's no lag. Yeah. In some cases, maybe we've got some rasterized content that might get a little tiny bit of extra lag, but it is overcome very, very quickly. Yeah. From there, much quicker than Illustrator or Photoshop will render it. And you'll notice there's no block rendering there either. It's the whole screen instantly. So very, very fast to work with, minimal UI. What we don't want to create with this particular product is something where you see a whole load of panels, 90% of which you're not going to be using at any one time, right? Because that's the truth in those things. You're using hardly any of all of that extra stuff. It's all there in case you need it, but what's the point in having it there if you're not using it? If you're not using the color guide, turn it off. If you're not using the swatches panel, turn it off. If you're not using Pathfinder, turn it off. All of those things. No point in having them there at all. So I've just got an extended panel out there. That's symbols. I'll come to that in a moment. And here on the right-hand side, I've got the context-sensitive properties panel, something which is being adapted into other products as well. In fact, Dreamweaver's had it since Macromedia days. So this is a fictitious app. Obviously, I'm not going along with the material guidelines here. I thought I'd make it a bit more colourful. This one with some gradients in it as well, because I'm retro and old school and I like gradients. So it's based on a food app, right, called Eats. When you get into Eats, you can decide one of these different things using these tiles. So I want to eat at a restaurant. I want some fast food. I want one of my favourites. Surprise me. Show me stuff I've ordered recently, and show me stuff based on my location, and a viewer profile at the top. In this section here, we're going to have a little map, and then we're going to have at least something for the fast food and possibly the restaurant food, depending on how we're doing. So I'm going to select this artboard to start off with, and I'm just going to drag a copy of that down here. And the idea I want here is I'm going to simulate in this journey the experience of signing in. So when the user sees the splash screen will then be defocused, and a login bubble will appear on top of that. So to do that, I'm going to draw a rectangle, and in here, some of the shortcuts are similar to those in Illustrator, some of them are different. So rectangle in here, for example, is R and not M as it is in Illustrator, but it's easy enough for you to decode those things. I'm going to turn on some background blur here, And then I'm just going to dial that up. Actually, I think I'll actually go for background blur itself. Okay, so I'm just going to dial up the blur there, and I can tune the brightness as well, and also the overall opacity of that too. And then I'll bring the bubble in like so. The bubble is actually a group here, so I'll just grab hold of that and bring that in and drop that on top like so. There we go, perfect. That will do just there. So the user gets hold of that, then they log in. I'll just name this screen here, log in, like so. And then they make their way out to this screen. Well, this one's pretty much finished. So what I'm going to do is just grab this stuff from the top here and copy it. So I've got hot dog menu there and title bar. Then I'm going to click on this artboard and paste. And you'll see it keeps the relative coordinates of the artboard as it drops the artwork down. And of course, a more efficient use of this would have been for me to turn it into a symbol, but as I'll do that shortly anyway, I'm not going to worry too much for now. So I could just replicate that across all of my artboards very quickly. What's meant to go on this screen here are nearby locations, and so I'm going to simulate that with a map, and in here, in my Finder, I've got this full screen map just here, and what I'm going to do is drag that in from the Finder. You can see that as I move it around, it's highlighting different places that can be dropped, and this here is being dropped onto the artboard, so I've got that. And XD has a very capable drawing engine inside of it. You can paste Illustrator content in. You can actually paste content in from Sketch if you've got legacy stuff from Sketch, because a lot of people moved out to Sketch and are then finding themselves coming back because they've already got Adobe tools, so they're kind of exploring in this and working in this, this tool here. It is awesome. And so it understands the clipboard for both of those things. So the reason I showed you Illustrator to start off with, for example, is if you're developing stuff in there because you've got a whole load of other engines and tools that you can use to build stuff, you can just copy it out of there and drop it straight into XD. But I will draw something for you. So what I'm going to do here is draw an ellipse like so, same as you would on a desktop tool, holding down Shift just to create a constrained circle. And then with my selection tool, I'm just going to double click on that, and you'll see it gives me access to the Beziers here. So, I said that funny, Beziers, but there we are. I'll double click on the one at the bottom here, and it converts it from being a curved point to a corner point, like so. So it makes it very easy for me to draw a location marker. Then I'm going to give that a fill. So for example, I might want to go for kind of a red fill there like so. I'm just trying to balance out for the projection, but that's about as bright as I can get it. It's pretty bright. Just there, and I can save colour swatches down here as well, you may well have noticed. So I can draw that just there. I'm going to turn the border off. I don't want a border. And now I'm going to draw another ellipse. So I'll just make my way to here, and just as I would in Illustrator, I'm going to hold down Alt and Shift to draw a constrained shape from the centre outwards. And then I'll select both of those things. You'll notice, hopefully, that other options have become available at the top of the Properties Inspector, just here. So now it's said, right, okay, you've got more than one thing active. So it's turned off some other things, but my alignment options are here. And then my Boolean functions are here also. So I'm going to use a subtract Boolean, which knocks out the ellipse shape from the shape underneath it. And you'll notice that that remains illuminated. That's because it is still there. The ellipse is still there. If I needed to change anything about it, I can access that by double-clicking into the shape, and I can drill my way down to that particular ellipse, and I can model that still further without having to go back and redraw it. It's pretty much the same as making a compound shape in Illustrator, which of course you do by holding down the Alt or Option key. Rather than committing to that, you get the same visual effect from it. So I've got that the whole time there, and I might want to add something to it. I could, if I wanted to, add a bit of a shadow on there, which I've just done. And of course, if I was going to use this more than once, it would make sense for me to turn this into a symbol, which I simply do by tapping the plus just there like so. And then, of course, I can just bring as many of those in as I need to add those locations. Could have made that a bit smaller, but not to worry. Yeah, so we'll just pretend there are 2 restaurants in that area. So you get to see there how the drawing engine works. Then we'll come on to this section here. So this is where we're going to show what comes up in the results for fast food. And I've got this grid of objects just here. So there will be an image here, then there'll be a name, then a description, then a rating, and then different operations you can choose, like text me this, or call the restaurant, or share this location or restaurant with other people, that kind of thing. So I'll pick that up like so as a group, and then I'm going to turn that into a repeat grid by tapping repeat grid over on the side here. Okay. Once I've done that, you'll see I have handles to the right hand side and to the bottom of this group. And if I pull out the handle on the right hand side, you can see I can add more columns really, really easily. And XD recognizes gaps as an object. So if I wanted to move these around, or the gap between them, you can see I can simply mouse down and drag in there to change that gap. XD always gives you a numeric HUD, right? So you'll always see the numbers because, of course, they're important to you, and your devs are going to need to work to those numbers also. Okay, and you'll notice also if I just move something, well, in fact, I'll move another object in a minute, but you'll see as soon as I get close to another object, even if I'm using the arrow keys, it will persistently show me that value. So if I went over to the right-hand side here, for example, and start to use my arrow keys, can you see that now? If I zoom in for you, so this is selected, there you go, and as I do it, it's showing me proximity to that object in terms of space, and as I move upwards, then I'm getting exactly the value that I want from there. All right, I'll move that back into the center, and then I'm going to add some more rows. So, whoops, not going to rotate it. There we go. Bring that down, add a few more rows just there. I think that will do. Let's go one more, just down to about there. Good. I think we're good there. Now I'm going to need the artboard to scroll here, so I'm just going to select the artboard and then pull down the artboard to the dimension that I'd like. Normally I'd leave some stuff for the chrome on the bottom there, but I'll just bring that up so it's nice and tight like that. Then it needs to be populated, and that's where I've got a stack of images inside of my project folder just here. So if I go to this fast food folder, you can see that I've got a bunch of different images pre-prepared here, okay, that I can use inside of that menu. And what I don't want to do, because it's laborious and it's a waste of everybody's time, is to select an object on my artboard and then use a place command to bring that in and then rinse and repeat that until the whole lot is exhausted. What I do want to do is select all of that content and drag it in and allow it to be populated on its own in one go. Okay, so I've got all of those items there now. I've also got a list of fast food here, okay, just a straightforward text list, not something in Word. That's really important because Word adds its own markup. It won't work with that. It needs to be a text file. But I've got a text file there, and I'm going to drag the text file in and on top of that word meal there, like so, if I can just get to that, and you'll see it populates all of those things. So again, if I've got that information, which I probably have from something like a spreadsheet, for example, I can just push that out and then drag that directly in, and it saves me any risk of miskeying any of that content as well, and it makes my work a lot faster. So you go through all of that, and then you build out. I'm not going to bother with the restaurant food artboard there. I'll just get rid of that just for the purpose of this. But you'd carry on, and you'd build out whatever it is you need to build. This is capable of holding on to hundreds of artboards. So you can develop as many as you want in here. You can even develop for all of the different platforms you're going to support in here. So if you want to do your phone, your tablet, and your desktop app in one place to save you moving assets between different project files, you can do all of that in here. Okay? You see the canvas, if I keep zooming right out, very, very big indeed, and it will expand to whatever you need it to be. Okay, so you do all of that, you build all of that side. That's kind of the first stage of UX work, as you probably well know, right? It's the iterative stage at the beginning where you're getting the design right and then you're kind of building that out. The next stage, of course, is prototyping. Now, if you're using something outside of the Creative Cloud ecosystem, what you've then got to do is move those assets via a plugin or otherwise into a prototyping tool. Yeah. Now, that in itself is a speed bump because you've got to kind of export a bunch of assets and then ingest them into that system. Not all, but in most of those systems, you have to do that. Yeah. That means if anything changes, and that's what I want you to bear in mind, you've got to go back, do that, re-export it, re-ingest it, and potentially wire the whole thing back up again. The experience in XD is somewhat different. I can, if I want to, as I have just done, use a Control-Tab shortcut. That's the same on both platforms, Windows 10 and the Mac OS Control-Tab here. And you'll see at the top of the screen, it switches to prototype. And also, a lot of the interface disappears. Because in prototyping mode, all of those design tools have no meaning, so we don't show them. It is that simple. Yeah? Only need to see what you need to do the job. And that here is effectively a selection tool. You'll see that things, now if I go to this screen here, for example, when I click on an object, here I've clicked on an artboard, yeah, that it has a loop off to the side, it's like a hook, and I can drag that down to this artboard just here, and so I'm wiring that up. And so this tells me a few things here. Firstly, the target. If you've got 300 artboards inside of this project, what you don't want to do is be trying to tag it up to something that you can't clearly see. So you can drag this to whatever the nearest object is and then target it from here really easily. So we did think about how we were building this, right, to make it useful. Then you've got transitions, so all of course, CSS3 transitions, so that gives you another idea of where this will end up eventually. Not at the moment, but where it's kind of going. So I've got all of the different transitions I can use here. I'll stick with dissolve, and then easing methods. So ease in, ease out, ease in and out, yeah, which I think I'll just have a bit of easing in there, so it'll start, and then a duration. So that's where the user goes. So it goes off to here, and then the user logs in. So what I'll do is I'll actually double-click into this group, which gives me access to the content, and then I'll drag a wire across to this screen here. I'm going to click on the artboard as well. I'll just have this one so this one slides up, I think. I'll choose any, but you could choose actually next time. And I'm going to click on the artboard because I also want to specify this as being the home screen as well. Okay? And that's as simple as activating that tab. Then the user will click on a tile. Now, of course, I've only wired up a couple of the tiles here, but I'm going to go to this fast food tile. Of course, I could go down to the object, but as you can see there, a larger target makes it more usable. Yeah, so you don't have to concentrate so much on where you're clicking. There's a brilliant military phrase that goes along with that I've always remembered when I'm doing this, and the phrase is, the time taken to acquire a target is a function of the distance to and size of the target, which in plain speak means if it's the size of a barn and you're quite close to it, the chances are you're going to hit it, no matter how bad a marksman you are, right? So that's the thing, for having a larger target makes it easier to use. And I'll drag that one off to there. This one I'll have that so it slides left for no reason whatsoever. And I'll also go to the map and take that out to the map screen like so. Now, if you're eagle-eyed, you will have noticed that there's something I haven't done there. And just so you know, it's on purpose. Yeah. If you don't know what it is, that's fine, because it will be revealed in a moment. But there is something in two places, actually, I haven't done something, okay? So I'd do that, I'd go through, I'd wire everything up, and you can see it's very, very simple, very interactive for me to do that. And now I'm going to come up to this play icon at the top here. Now, if you ever used any of our products like Animate, and if you've used the EPUB functionality in InDesign, you'll know that you can use a shortcut to activate a preview of that. And we've carried that across in here. So you can click the icon if you want, but you can also hit Command-Enter there, and you've got something that you can see straight away here, and you can interact with it. In fact, if I go to this artboard inside of the prototype, then it fits to the live window like so, and then I can click here. So this is a nice way for me to actually see my journey, and so I'll go type, and then I'd do my password there, and you can see the transition taking effect, and then I might look at the location just there. Does anybody see where the problem is yet? Yeah, right, there's no way out. I've worked myself down into a corner. But like I said, I did that on purpose because, again, if I was working in a disconnected system, I would have a real problem there, right? Because then I'd have to go back out, I'd have to create new graphics, re-ingest the whole lot into this system, yeah, and then carry on from there. This is XD. I don't have to do that. What I can do is just switch back into design mode here. Let me just zoom in on the top of the map there. Okay, and I'll draw a rectangle like so. Similar controls to Illustrator. So you've got corner widgets there. Yeah, if you needed to change the corner radius, you can do that interactively like so. Yeah, you can also rotate the thing around. So you see if I hover near to corner, yeah, then I can just drag that around. I can hold shift to constrain that as well. As you've already seen, yeah, I can use the selection tool here and double click on items here. I can also delete an anchor point, all with the same tool. You'll notice the complete absence of a direct selection or group selection tool in there. Not needed, right? You can do them all by indicating what you want by the number of clicks or taps that you make with it. And then I could bring that in like so. Actually, that kind of needs rotating around that way, doesn't it? So if I just give them a really large, and I apologize for the crudeness of this particular item, but it's doing its job. And you've already seen here now that it's arrived inside the prototype window. If you haven't noticed that, I'll just wobble it around. There you go. There you go. It's like a budget version of Dad's Army. Yeah, with its little triangle going on there. Very low budget version of Dad's Army. And then I'll switch into prototype mode, and then I will wire that up across to this screen, and then I'll click on that there like so. And so now I have got a way out. Yeah. Directly from there, I can now click. Whoops, well, I haven't got one out just there, but that's fortunate for me. All I need to do, switch into design mode, copy that, go across to this artboard and paste. Whoops, didn't activate the artboard. And paste, and it pastes it in exactly the same location, so I don't have to fiddle it around to make sure that it goes in it. Remember, relative coordinates, so it just knows exactly where it's meant to go. And then switch to prototyping mode just there, and wire that up so that jumps where I want that to go. Now, as it happens, that hasn't gone to the right place, and I ignored the screen. So I'll just pull that, I'll go to here, and this time I'll change that back to home, just there. And there's the wire going across. Some people get comfortable when they see all of the wires going on all the time. In order to facilitate that, all you have to do is select everything, and it will show you all of the wiring. But I digress. I went back out to here, and then I could click on here, and if I need to get back out of there, then I can do that like so. I'll go back to the fast food, because this is the one where I've got some scrolling, okay, so I can see how that would look. And maybe one of my colleagues turns around to me, and my colleague says, you know, they're not big on squares, this particular customer, because with squares, it kind of looks like, I'm just signing in, by the way, at the same time as doing this, so excuse me if the phone beeps. I forgot I was signed out of this particular app. Yeah, they're not particularly big on squares. What they'd rather have circles, because they're not pointing you away from the content. That's an interesting school of thought, right? That squares actually direct you. They're 4 arrows directing you away from the content. So what I can do here, again, in another system, I'd have to go back in and make edits. But here I can go back into design, double click onto that particular part of that group, which gives me access to it, and I can change those to circles like so, and they change inside of the prototype at the same time. Yeah. So you can see it's very, very interactive way of working and frees you up from a whole load of things when all you need to do is to just switch back into a different mode and then you can work with it. Well, that's fine in itself, and being able to share that as in that way, in that thing there is great. But what if I'm working with somebody who's further away? Yeah. What if I need to show this to somebody on the other side of the world? Well, I can record it as a movie. What I'm going to do is go back to the splash screen here in design mode, and then I'm going to click this icon at the top of the window here, and then I'll just work through the journey, right? So I'd click here, and then I'd type, and I'd click here. Then it would take me through to this, and I'd click on the location, see what's there, and then I'd click here. Then I'd look at the fast food, that sort of thing, and I'll stop that just there, like so. And if I pop out to the Finder, then you can watch that movie just there. So let me just get out onto the desktop. Not used to doing it by clicking. There you go. And if I just preview that. So you can see that it's visualizing my touches. Like so. So I could describe how that works. Okay. Pop back out to here. Something else I can do. So if I'm in the room with the people, something else I can do is actually send this to the XD app on my device. So if I tap here, okay, this should, in a second, if my app is on, let me just get in there. There we are. Ooh. I'm still not signed in. Oh, I am. I'm signed in as someone else. That's going to be an epic fail. All right, I'll do that while I'm going over the next bit. But it will show me that on the device, and I can interact with that in exactly the same way. I can also, I don't have to be tethered to it to use it. It should synchronize for me automatically when you're signed in as the same person. Yeah. And then you can just unplug that, take it with you to the meeting, and that's a great way to let the client test it out for themselves and see how they work with it. If you actually want to go into a model of testing, XD also supports that. So just here I have this share icon, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to share this again. I'm just going to pop back out to my Finder, because in my EATSAP folder just here I've got this PNG file that's meant to be the icon for this particular application, and I'll drag that into that window like so. Okay, and then I'm going to make this a brand new link just here and allow commenting. So if I tap new link, what this will do, and I don't know, I haven't tested anything going upwards on this network just yet. So that's good. I'll copy the link to my clipboard and I'll go back out. That's why that's acting up, isn't it? Okay. And I'll just open Chrome, and I'll very quickly get those windows down into the dock, create a new window, paste that link, and let that connect. Okay, so that's opening up in Chrome. There's the, it's gone to the artboard that I was at previously. Ideally, what I should have done is focused on the main artboard to start with, but I haven't wired this up for many routes out of here. But there's the icon that I dragged in, and then I can experience this in exactly the same way. You can see that I can scroll up and down here. I can test things out, so that arrow's not wired up. For example, here's the one that I drew. Here's the one out to the map, just there. And that means that people can actually test it. Yeah. We can give them all of the models that they need to test against. So show me how you would discover food at a fast food restaurant, for example. And then they can comment on how that journey works for them, because that's what this field here is for. Okay. Also, by the way, if you send someone the link to this, it's not a publicly discoverable link. You can see it's got a reasonable degree of encryption in the URL anyway. It's not the sort of thing you're going to come up, and none of those things are listed on Google, so you're not going to find it, or any other search engine for that matter. You're not going to find it accidentally. You would have to give someone the link in order for them to use it. Okay, so if you distribute that link, and you could bit link that, there's nothing to stop you doing that if you wanted to do that also. If you send that to them and they view it on a device that matches the profile of your work, yeah, so for example, iPhone 6 here, if I sent that to somebody who viewed it on an iPhone 6, it goes into full screen mode. It doesn't just do it, right, because otherwise that would be alarming for them as a user. They get a really big bubble that they have to dismiss before they continue that tells them how to get out of it. And basically you long press on the screen and it gives you the choice to either switch, because you might have several things for them to look at, switch out to another one, yeah, or to exit from there. But it's handy that it does that, and especially if you're testing across several different things and you have those inside of the same document. It means the same person, if they've got a phone and a tablet, they can actually test that out for themselves on both things and see it pretty much as close to the experience as they're likely to get. Okay, so I can test that from here, then I can add something as a comment here, so I'm not going to be very elaborate. I'm just going to put nice in there and hit that through. I'm commenting on my own work again, which is a little bit uncomfortable, but I can't exactly get one of you to come down, sign in and do it, to be fair. And you can see I've got a thread of comments here that I'll be able to see. This uses the Creative Cloud notification system. My notifications are turned off because I don't want to get any texts from my wife or anything while I'm in the middle of talking to you. Of course, that would be dreadfully unprofessional. I'm not saying it hasn't happened before, because it has. I've forgotten more than one occasion. Fortunately, it's only been relatively R-rated stuff like bring wine, yeah, or something like that. Could have been worse. Or cat pictures of my cats. Anyway, so that's a really handy thing to do. You can, or shortly, very, very shortly, like imminently, you can actually add annotations at an object level as well. Yeah, so you can pin an annotation to a particular object or interaction. Okay, so you've got a way there. You can test that amongst a bunch of people. You can get their feedback straight away from there. You can see I've got the chance to resolve that and mark it as being resolved, which of course, if they refresh, they then got the choice. Well, it would refresh for them anyway and tell them, because the Creative Cloud notification system would tell them that the item's been resolved. And then they could have a look at that again and see if that then met their particular criteria. All you would then need to do from XD, okay, is to export the assets, which you can see there's a command here. It works in a very similar way to the way that it works in Illustrator, apart from it's indicative, right? In that if you have nothing selected, it will export you images of all of the artboards at the renditions that you want them for. If you have content on artboards selected, then it will export all of those pieces as discrete parts of content. Yeah, so it would take each group and export them as separate items, and you've got exactly the same renditions in XD, apart from the SVG part just at the moment. I don't think we switched that on yet, but the very fact that I said that means that it's coming. Oh, it is there now, so that's cool. Actually, thinking about it, I'll just remember that has been there a little while. So you can export all of that content from there. Then your dev's got something to work to. They've got all the content, and they do all of the stuff that they need to do as well. But as I indicated, everything in here works. This is actually built in HTML and CSS anyway. It's one of the things like Felix, Project Felix, which I'm showing later on today, built exactly the same way, right? So we're not compiling it in the way that we've done our apps historically. It is compiled, but essentially driven by HTML and CSS and JavaScript, which makes it super, super lightweight and very, very extensible. So that concludes with just under 3 minutes to go. That concludes your tour, your whip round tour of XD. If you haven't used it yet, I do hope that you'll give it a go. If you've got Creative Cloud, then you've already got XD. Unless you're in an enterprise environment and you have it switched off, if you're in an enterprise environment and your administrator hasn't allowed it, then go and tell them if you see value in it, which I'm sure you must do, really. I don't meet many people who don't. Then tell them what they could be saving and what you could be doing with it, and get them to turn it on. And if they have a problem with that, if you're an enterprise customer, then get them to talk to your customer success manager, and they'll talk to me, and I'll go talk to them. And no one says no to me. Yeah. All right. That's not true. Actually, loads of people say no to me all the time, but I was just having a big up moment. All right. Thanks ever so much for watching. If you've got any questions, now's a good time to ask them. We've got a couple of minutes. Yes? You just create a new artboard. So there's an artboard tool here if you need it. Yeah, and wherever you click is where the artboard will be generated. So if I click above this artboard, for example, it adds an artboard above. If I click to the left, it adds an artboard to the left, and so on. And then you just target the artboard, and you've got a whole range of different profiles over on the side here. Yeah, so you just go for one of those profiles, or if those profiles don't meet your immediate needs. So for example, we did some work with a couple of our gaming partners, and they wanted to do stuff for television, and we didn't have that, and so they just created their own profile for TV. Yep, so everything's in one place. Yeah, and then you can use all of those other, I didn't really dig into the symbols and colours and everything, but you could see that they were all there. The layers hierarchy in here is different also, so rather than in Illustrator where you see all of the layers on all the time, this only shows you them in the context of where you're working. Yeah, so you'll see if I target a particular artboard and go to another artboard, you can see that that's in there. If I target a piece of content in here, can you see how it filters that down? So I can just see the component parts of that group, which is a really nice way to drill down into the content. Additionally, one thing I didn't mention, I'll take another question in a second, but one thing I didn't mention in here is that we have UI kits for iOS and Windows built in. So if I needed one for Windows, then that iOS, oh actually we've moved them all to offline now. I thought we still kept that one inside. But anyway, they're there. Google Material just takes you out to the Google Material website, and then you can just download the sticker sheet, which they do for Illustrator, Sketch, Photoshop, and XD off there, so you can get all of those things. Right, where's the next question? Mark?
What's the best way to adapt this for different devices?
The best way to adapt it? Well, you don't have to really. You just resize your content to suit the device. It's that simple. Create a new artboard, push the content onto it.
So you're going to do it for 5 different profiles?
Or more, yeah. It's not, well, Android, because Android's like all over the shop with whatever. Yeah, whatever you, however many ways you can cut up economically for your own business a sheet of Gorilla Glass, which is the determining thing in many of these. It's not actually the cabinet or the components. It's actually the Gorilla Glass that they want to do. Right? How are we going to cut that up? And then they kind of work. It's like a Bond movie. They give it a release date, yeah, and then they work backwards from there. It's like that. Right, we've got this much glass. How much money you got? Let's cut it up into these things. Yeah, yeah. So yeah. Any more? Yes.
When it comes to like exporting these elements for the developers to use,
Yep.
what format are they expecting to receive?
That's entirely between you and your developers. They will ask for one or the other. They will either ask, typically they'll ask for a PNG, yeah. But if they're working for iOS 11, they're going to start asking for PDF, yeah, or they'll ask for SVG, because SVG gives them the most flexibility. And that's partly what the SVGs are actually normally wrapped inside the PDF for vector work. So that's why Apple are moving to that direction, mainly because theirs have a certain proportional arrangement. There are only 3 proportional arrangements for iOS, and so they all fit into that, so they all scale nicely in there. Yeah. Yes? Yeah, as you saw there, it's very, very flexible. You don't have to stop doing anything, even when you're in the middle of a prototype. Yeah, you can just literally paste stuff across, move stuff across, redraw stuff, delete, re-add. Anything you want to do, it is that flexible. Yeah, now that actually is something, that is the only way to do that manually, unfortunately. Yeah. That unless you've got a symbol there which you can replace with those things, that's one way of doing it. But it is lacking a paste on all artboards command. The reason for that, as I understand it, and this is not a direct quote that you'd actually have to ask the engineers, is because people can work for all their different supported platforms inside of one document, that's where the relative page geometry may change, and so it might not suit. So the complexity they've got there is if you've got phone with tablet with desktop at the same time, you would want to paste on a specific subset of those artboards potentially. Do you see what I mean? So that's probably why that isn't there at the moment. But that's a really good segue into something else. I'm going to take this question. Can you just hold that thought for a minute? Yeah. Go on.
It's just following on with the collaboration with developers.
Yep.
Say if you were to make further amendments to the artwork,
Yep.
is there a way of then being able to receive that live upload in the same file?
So synchronous working is something that's very, very interesting. So some other platforms support that, where people can work on the same file synchronously from different locations. That isn't in XD yet, but you can bet that will be on the roadmap at some point. Yeah. So, and that's the way I do it. The other way you can do it, and whether I don't know, and I'm going to run out of time. Well, I actually am out of time, but the Creative Cloud mechanism allows for assets to be pulled down from the browser, so it may well support that at some point in the future. Very quickly, and I'm so sorry I'm a couple of minutes over, the best thing for you to do if you want something inside of this that isn't there, or you want to find out if it's coming along, is to go to XD and go to its user voice page where you've got this provide feedback, and this takes it to the user voice page, and you can see exactly what's going on in there. This is the most transparent project at Adobe. Yeah, and you can also see how by voting on things, features that people have asked for, how they get escalated through engineering. Yeah, so if you want paste on all artboards, that topic will be in here. You can search for it just there and then add your weight to that, and that will escalate its priority. All right. I'm sorry I'm a couple of minutes over. Go off to your next sessions. I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks ever so much, Al. Thank you. Thanks. Ta.
Twitter handle or something?
Yeah, at Tony Harmer.
At Tony Harmer.
Yes, please. All right, mate? Yes. Are you in here next?
No, I'm in here after next.
You're in here after next, oh, okay.
So if I wanted to save that for Android, Mac,
Yeah.
iPad, would I have to save it and then rebuild it?
Yeah, so you need to do the developer end. But,
That's what I thought.
yeah,
I've had to play around with it. It's really good.
yeah, it's excellent. It's and it's well, you'll see things change.
Yeah.
Before Christmas.
Well, I've been watching all the little developments come and go. Well, come.
Hey. No, sorry, it's me booting microphones around because people left the table. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, go on.
So with the prototyping, can you do drop-downs or animations within that?
You can't do animations at the moment. Sorry, did I mishear your question? Or did you?
No, I didn't get
Oh,
a
you
chance
didn't
to
answer ask it. That's sorry. No, not at the moment. So micro interactions, they are very high on the radar, but not here yet. So the
Is it something that's coming up in the next year, or is it?
well, I can't actually yes. It'll be something that is coming along. Right, it has been noted. So just so you know, the main thing engineering have been contending with is making sure that we've got parity on Mac and on Windows. Because otherwise it's not fair. Yeah. So our CEO insisted that we had parity on operating systems, then we can move forward. And we're just about at that stage now, so everything will move forward. Yeah. But no, it will come. As for when, I don't know, but it will come. They know it's needed. All right? No worries.
Got you doing the boomerang ninja move.
That's awesome. Right, let's get the screen too.
Oh yeah, XD, lovely.
We could move it slightly.
Yeah, wherever you want.
That would be really good because I can get
Well,
more.
I've got 5 people to present to.
And the world of the web.
Right.
Is VGA okay?
Yeah.
Let's do a quick
I think that's the only-
test.
I think that's
There's
the
no
only
HDMI, yeah?
I know they don't have HDMI.
Okay, no problem. Let's make sure it works. Let's take the bag off. Tony Goodman.
Tony Goodman. Do you have a Twitter?
No, don't do social media. Just not my thing. Sorry, am I behind the times? Oh my God, that's big. Can you see that okay?
Just about.
He needs to lose a bit of tune. He in here. He's a sponsor. I better not say anything horrible.
This is too bright and too close. Tell me.
No, it's cool. I'm okay. Hey, oh my God. Wow. Everyone hear me okay? Yeah. God. I don't know what to do. Should we have it nearer? Can everyone hear? That's cool. Excellent. Wow. Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3. Oh my God. Look at that. Oops. I'm going to knock water over. Let's do that for a sec. Oh. Ah. Photoshop disappeared. Oh, I need my mouse. What am I doing? Can I plug in for a bit of power?
Yes, you can.
Is that
There's
okay? I
something
just do
over there.
just in case. Right, this is my problem. I need I'm going to need to unstick just for a sec.
It's okay, it's not mine. So
Oh, right, okay.
feel free if you need more tape.
Yeah, no, that's cool.
So I do
Don't need the ace. Just want to have some space on my side. That's, yeah. Yeah, wouldn't be a bad idea to. Oh, no, it's okay. I've got it. Not a lot of mouse room.
Tony, if you want
Hi.
to use that,
No, I'm good.
great.
Yeah, no, it's all fine.
Microphone, it's okay.
Yes,
You
fine.
have screen.
Yeah,
It's
I've got your
what's
video
an
all ready
adapter
to
here?
go.
I need to take my adapter. You have directly VGA.
Yeah, no, we thought that was best.
Great. You have my phone number, just in case if you need.
What, for now?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Should I?
Yeah, if you like, but
Please.
Yeah, sure.
Just in case.
No,
you
no,
need
no,
Me?
absolutely, yeah. Yeah.
Because I will be all around.
Yeah, no, that's cool. So I might even already have it. I'm not sure. Sorry. Yeah,
07595
yeah,
710
yeah.
651.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Smashing, sorry, thank you.
Okay, what?
Hello. No, this is Green 1.
It's last floor, so if you get outside, up the stairs, my colleagues will help you. Okay, HPH1.
No, this isn't storytelling, that's screen 4.
How do we get to screen 4?
It's out and up to the top, apparently. Yeah. Photoshop's much better. Oh, God, look, I've lost everyone. No one wants Photoshop. Everyone. So, Half the room disappears.
Yes, this is virtual. They're right. Cool. Brilliant. Thank you very much. You need wireless?
No, I'm good. Oh my God, that's loud. Sorry, when do I know we're ready to go and everyone's here?
You should start at 11, I think.
Okay.
So this means...
Well, that's like 15 more minutes. Are you sure it's not 10:45? Or is everything running late?
So, 9:30, 10:30.
10:30.
Everything is running 15 minutes.
So it should be, we're ready now to roll. Wow.
Yeah, you
Okay.
can...
Okay, fine, no problem. Hi everyone, we're going to start. Actually, that really is in my face. Sorry everyone.
Or if you want to wait another
Couple of minutes. Yeah, no, I will. People still coming in. No problem. No problem. Thanks. Sorry, just God, it's too loud. Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you. Just waiting a couple more minutes, guys, and then we'll get going. Oh. Hi, come on in. Have a seat. So what is it you're doing?
Live streaming to Facebook.
Oh, I see. Oh, okay. Okay. Shall I play this thing? No, nothing. Oh, more people coming. Okay, just going to run this thing first, guys, just for a minute.
Hello, welcome to another year at Designer Fiesta.
No, is that coming out? Sound-wise? Should I be... Maybe I'll put that there. That's what we're missing. Have they not given it to us? Okay. Turn down the sound. It's going to be loud. It's going to be loud. It's going to be loud, so just hold on while we sort out this.
Hello, welcome.
Yeah, thought that might happen.
Welcome to another year at Designer Fiesta. Here at BBX, we're pleased to be sponsoring the event and giving you, the new business owners in the graphic design field, a great boost to your business. At BBX, we work with a large community of businesses, guaranteeing you extra business to fill up the spare capacity that you might have in your company. Think about that spare capacity for a moment. Empty hours and empty days where you're not earning any money. You could have guaranteed new customers from the BBX community to fill that up and give you extra revenue. And we've arranged a special deal for you. Instead of our normal joining fee of £347, today you can open an account with BBX for only £49, saving yourself almost £300 and giving you £1,000 worth of interest-free line of credit that you can even go and spend on some courses with Academy class. So have a great day, learn some new things, and hopefully you'll be enjoying some guaranteed new business with BBX.
And there we go. Hope you enjoyed that. Right, welcome everyone. I'm Tony, if you didn't get it before, and we're going to do just a little splash around, a little play with Photoshop, and the idea here really is, I called it Photoshop on the edge, but it's not really on the edge. It's just about a little thing to do with selections, edges, matting, and we'll go quite quickly into blending modes. So here's the deal. The plan is, very simply, that you spend a lot of your time in Photoshop doing amazing, fantastic things for the client, and you're busy and you've got loads to do and you never have the time to stop and just look at something. And that's what I want to do in this first early bit, which is just to stop and look. So I've got a duck. Everyone see the duck? No problem. I'm going to zoom in because I just want to see where the duck ends and the background begins. So has everyone got the idea that I'm just going in at pixel level, and this is all I'm going to do, and I'm just having a quick look to see what we're doing and where it is. Now, does everyone get the idea that there are a lot of yellow pixels, and towards the edge, obviously, they fade out, not a problem. Everyone gets the idea. And then I can definitely, personally, see some pixels there. And my question is, how good are your eyes? Is there a yellow pixel there or not? Answer, who knows, and indeed, who cares? Because the bottom line is, the yellow fades out to nothing anyway, and it really isn't that important. So, it's just the idea that one never ever bothers to do that. If I do a magic wand selection, and I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to delete it, I delete, yeah? And the big question is, what did it delete, and where did it choose to do it? I'm going to undo, again, just to say, the magic wand selection actually made a decision about what pixels to include and what pixels not to include, and that's all it's about. I'm going to deselect, and I'm turning anti-alias off to say, right, it only picks the 100% white pixels. So, simple choices you've got at various points to say, should I or shouldn't I pick up the white, and how much of the yellow do I want to pick up? All will become clear in a minute, but all I want to do is deselect again, and I'm simply going to take my tolerance up to, let's say, 80 or so, do a magic wand again. Does anything much change? And the answer is, yeah, occasionally it does, and occasionally it doesn't. Nothing seems to have changed going up the slope, but when I deselect and then I come back and take it down to, let's say, 15, I definitely get a sense now that some pixels are included in the selection and some aren't. No big deal, none of this is really important, but it's just something that you never have time to pay attention to when you're there. So here's what we're going to do. We're just going to get a new layer. We're going to put it underneath the duck. We're going to fill it with some kind of lovely green, no problem. I'm going to deselect and fill with green. It's, of course, not visible at the moment because the duck's completely covering it up. I'm going to magic wand, always good to be on the right layer. I'm going to magic wand, again, the white, to do a selection. And this time, delete. And the only real question, I'll hide the selection edges for a sec. The only question really is, when I did the magic wand, what happens? And I hope what everyone realizes, and I hope this projector makes it clear enough, is that there's definitely some layers, some pixels on the layer that definitely have a white edge to them. Again, does it matter when you're looking at it a full view? No, probably not. You can probably see a bit of ghosting there. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. By the way, if I were to go and change the background color to red, is that going to make any difference? And the answer is, maybe a bit, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. To me, I can definitely see more of the white edges. Red being darker than green is going to show the thing up slightly more. In a sense, although not exactly, that's why Hollywood shoots everything on green screen, because green is the lightest out of red, green and blue, and that's why you can fake and lose the ghosting edges in green, whereas if you're shooting as you used to on blue and certainly on red, it's just not going to work. So far pretty straightforward. Let's take another pick. I'm simply going to go in and find a, let's go and get it. I'm just going to get the idea, first of all, of what visibility is versus percentage tint. You can see I've got a purple background, black to white in terms of tint, but when I make my, my tints visible like so, black is 100%, I put a yellow, that's 100%. But as I take, does everyone see that on layer 2, the visibility, the opacity of the layer is now 75? Yes, grey fades in, but because there's a purple background, grey fades in. So as one goes down and reveals less and less tint, and of course 0 is 0, not only do I see that, of course, transparency is different to, and opacity is different to tint, but the most important thing is that as black goes against purple, yes, it just gets grayer, but it sort of gets more purpley grey, evidenced by when I make the yellow fade down, the yellow and the purple start over interacting, and that's where we're going, the idea of layers interacting and colours changing because we have effects going on. I'm just going to go and have a quick look at one more idea on selection edges. We'll go and have a look at the gun. There's the gun. Again, I'm going to, at this point, just magic wand the gun. Before I do that, I'll just get a new layer. And again, I'm just going to fill it with something. Red's okay. We'll fill it with red. Could have done green. It doesn't matter. Contiguous off to carry, to make the selection go inside where the trigger is. Always good to be on the right layer, as I keep saying. There we go. So I've done a selection of the white. This time I'm going to hit backspace. I'm going to deselect, and we absolutely get now the idea that when you do a selection, you've got this problem that at the edge, you've got these pixels that definitely are or are not included in the selection according to the tolerance. And there's only so much you can do with anti-aliasing and tolerance, and you're still going to get these selection edges when you try and remove stuff. So, of course, where we're heading in a sec is the idea that you don't really want to do selections and deletes when you want to hide things. You want to use blending modes to do it, which is where we're going. But I just wanted to say at this point that, of course, the idea certainly can be done. People might be aware of it, that under layer matting defringe, you have the ability, everyone keep their eye on the white bits of the pixels, you have the ability to actually blend the pixels by defringing them. And the big question I want to know is, does it delete pixels or does it blend them in? I'm going to undo in history and redo, and I hope everyone sees that actually what it's doing is it's turning, with defringe, it's definitely doing a good job of turning pixels in from white into blending them in the background. So again, selection edges, definitely something that's worth thinking about in terms of defringing alone. Look, does everyone see the little fingernail? What happened there? I had contiguous off. I should have had it on, and then I wouldn't have picked up the white of the fingernail. But hey, no big deal. That's the way it goes. A minor detail. I'm going to go back. A minor detail that's worth considering is this. Look, we put the white fringes back. Actually, I'll go step one down level so that we don't see the pixel grid. I'm going to deselect because I don't really need a selection edge. There's always a possibility of double-clicking your layer and getting the blending options panel in. This is where you could do blending modes. This is where you could do your effects. A lot of people used to this, not a problem. But what I wanted everyone to be clear about was that what you have the ability to do here is to make pixels appear or disappear. It's not a particularly great effect at the moment in terms of, in this case, the white, or in this term, the black. I can make pixels appear or disappear in terms of visibility rather than magic wand and deleting them. So I'm going to alt drag here to soften the edge, and as I do, what I'm hoping everyone sees is this idea that as I bring in my sliders, it's making a complete mess of the thumbs and fingers, but I'm more interested in what's going on here, and just that idea that I can blend in and out the actual amount of white pixels, and there we go. It's sort of definitely possible to fiddle. It's not a great idea at this point, but I just wanted to make that point that you have that idea. Every layer has its blending options. Cool, let's move on. So where might we want to start? Well, we want to talk about blending modes. So let's go and grab some cars, and let's go and grab a corporate logo that has to be on it. I'm going to select all and copy and close and paste, and I'm going to transform just to see if I can get the sponsor's logo on the bonnet. Everyone should be good with that idea. I'll move over a bit so that I'll leave history. I'll make it smaller, that much. I might want to do a distort just so it looks a bit more like it's on the bonnet, but hey, that's not really important. I'm now at this point going to just take a copy of that layer because I've got two methods of making this logo go on the bonnet. And the bottom line is, it's everything I've been saying so far. Do I do a selection or do I do some kind of other method of blending? If we do a selection and magic wand, I'll take contiguous off to get all the white. If I do that and I hit backspace, it looks like it's done a reasonably good job. I've deleted the white pixels. I have black pixels left. It looks reasonably okay. I don't have a problem with that. So welcome to the world of blending modes. I'm going to go to the other layer, which is this one where the white is still there. And we're going to talk about blending modes. In my intro, I was talking about the fact that everyone, or not my intro, but my spiel, everyone knows these, or should. Everyone has possibly played with them, and everyone, I'm hoping, has made absolutely no sense of them at all because they're really, really hard to understand. Okay, so let's just talk about them before I actually do anything, which is normal is obviously what we start with. We have this whole section here of darkening, multiply, color burn. It's like everything in Photoshop. They overlap, they overlie. Some do this, some do that, but broadly they all do a very similar thing, but with slight differences. We have the lighting section, which is light and screen and color dodge. We have the contrast section, which is the overlay section. And then we have some mathematical operations like difference and subtract, and we have hue and saturation. So here's the deal. I'm simply going to try multiply and instantly multiply on this layer, multiply removes white. So that's literally the first and the most important thing that everyone should get. You don't need to learn every single blending mode, but what you should always remember is multiply removes white. And again, I'm talking about edges here. Does everyone see the difference between the delete method, the magic wand and delete? The keys definitely are losing pixels. Does everyone see the richness of the top key? It's much better. It's lost a lot less of its pixels, but here it's just looking ragged and whatever. So one simple click in blending modes to make the white multiply. And of course the nice benefit of that is I've never actually got rid of the white, so if I needed to put the white back again, I could simply change the blending mode. So multiply removes white. Everyone okay with that? Multiply blending mode as opposed to a magic wand selection. I'm going to close that down and I'm going to move on to my next one, which is going to be just a nice simple firework display. There are two pictures. That's the picture with the firework there. That's the picture with the firework there. I want, in this case, actually I'm going to, hello, come on in. I'm going to overlay them to say, right, what I really want is I want to separate out all the fireworky bits of this photo. Well, there's absolutely no way. I'm on this layer, I'm on this, I'm on contiguous, off. I'm going to select, and yes, it sort of does a job, but what does it do when it's making a selection of the pixels there? This is just not going to work. I'm losing too much data, and all I want to do is copy this and paste it onto that firework. I'll deselect so that everyone gets the idea. Again, blending modes to the rescue. If multiply removes white, screen removes black. So one click will instantly reveal that the black gets removed by screen, and I'm able to very simply blend the two together. And look, if I can do a selection of obviously everyone can see that the Geneva skyline just stays where it is, but if I want to, I've got the ability to move this around because, of course, although I'm moving all the firework pixels and the black pixels, if I fancy them being slightly more overlaid or less overlaid, I can just move it around on that thing. Does everyone see the idea that actually there's a dirty grey gap there, but of course it's not visible like that? So the idea of screen removes black, and multiply removes white. If only it were that easy. Well, it is that easy in that case. Right, we're just going to go back to the gun. We're going to select all the gun. We're going to copy it. We're going to close it. We're going to open up some books in my library, paste my gun onto my books, At this point, I could do a multiply, but just be aware. What did I say? Screen removes, I can't even remember, white. Multiply removes black. If I do a multiply, it's never that easy. Multiply doesn't seem to remove the white. It seems to make the gun overlie the books. So don't be fooled into thinking that every time you've got white, you can just go to multiply and the white magically disappears. No, more complex things happen. Skin, black and white is what works. Yeah, but anything with skin and color is much, much harder. In this case, I'm absolutely going to do a contiguous white selection. Get rid of it all. Don't forget my little method. If I've got to cheat, it is matting defringe. And there we go. I'm going to do that. Oh, I had contiguous off and I mucked it up because I've got that little thing on the fingernail, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to go and open another firework and not the original. I'm going to select it all and copy and paste. Oops. Copy and close and paste and rotate. I'm going to make this firework, what's the time, 11:03, there. So what was the idea? The idea was that screen removes black, and so I'm able quite simply to give myself, let's put it underneath the gun, I'm able to, without much difficulty, give myself some gunfire. It doesn't quite look like it's at the right angle. There we go. Give myself some gunfire by using a screen mode on the firework. I wanted to remind everyone that you can double-click the layer and do this. And if anyone thinks, oh, excuse me, cancel that. If anyone thinks that there's possibly something not quite right about it one way or the other, and I have no particular opinion myself, but I just wanted to say, if everyone remembers that we have these blending modes and these blending conditions, and if I wanted to, does everyone remember that I drag to make white disappear, I drag to make black disappear. This time I'm going to reduce the amount of glow, but it's got a very, does everyone see a very hard edge? So again, I'm going to out drag and soften where the black disappears. So I have ability in blending options of all layers to just make the actual screen mode grow or fade according to, of course, what I'm removing, because I'm at this end of the blend if process. The idea is that I can control how much black disappears under the screen blending mode. So a screen blending mode removes black, but the blending conditions let me adjust how much black is removed, and I can make a change like that. Cool, time to move on. We've got lots to do and not enough time. So if screen was one, multiply was the other, what we're now going to do is we're going to go and have a quick look. Oh, I've created a new document. Not very good. I'm going to go and just have a quick idea, just to remind everyone. If I went and I had some snow, I'm going to select it all, and I needed to put it on a snowman. I'm going to paste it. We get that. It's not pure black and white, was the simple point I want to make here. So it's not a problem to instantly, was it screen or multiply? I can never remember. I'm always having to click on them until I get it right. I'm going to have a go at screen. Yes, indeed, it was screen. So I've got my snow on my snowman. But does everyone see there's definitely a blue tinge at the bottom? Because, of course, if I go back to normal, you can remember that it was not black and white. It was black and a fade to blue. I'll go back to screen. But all I'm going to do is I'm going to add simply a black and white filter as an adjustment layer to force the entire blue thing to become black and white. And I've got that idea that it was blue, but I can just cancel the light and make it black and white with a black and white adjustment layer. So there we go, snow on my snowman without any difficulty at all, using, again, a very simple idea of a screen blending mode. Right. Let's have a quick move on. Where might this be useful? Here it might be useful. You're given the opportunity to design a web button. I'm going to put it on a new layer. It needs a glassy effect. I'm going to go for black and white. I'm going to, no, I'm not going to go for black and white. I'm going to go for dark orange on one set. And I think we'll go for a creamy colour on the other. The idea is that I'm going to gradientify from, it's got to be the other way around, gradientify from top to bottom like so. There's my glassy effect. Maybe it looks good, maybe it doesn't. It's not really a problem. The only problem arises, just move that around. The only problem arises, of course, could knock it back a bit. There we go. The only problem arises if someone said, no, but it wasn't an orange button, it was something else. I'm just going to do a simple hue and saturation adjustment. And of course, the problem is that as you change color, the fade continues to be orange to blue, no good to anyone at all. So I'm going to undo all of that. And I'm going to create a new layer. Yep. And instead of light orange to dark orange, I'm going to go a gradient of, I can never remember if it's white to black or black to white. No matter how many times I rehearse it, I always get it wrong. I've gone for a new layer, black to white. Now, what do we say? Screen removes white, multiply removes black, or is it the other way around? Can never remember. Yeah, I got it back to front. I always get it back to front. So all I need to do now, of course, is change it to, I don't know, was it that one? Oh, God, it worked. That one. How about that? We'll knock it back again slightly. Not much difference to what I had before, obviously. But, of course, because it's actually a black to white fade, all I need to do now to change my button any way I like is to just keep changing. And, of course, because there's no color in the glassy effect, whatever color the button goes, the glassy effect goes with it. So, again, a nice, hopefully, use of a screen mode to get rid of color. Like so. Screen blending mode, multiply, fantastic. We've got to move on because we must do overlay. So I'm going to go into the overlay mode and we're going to shoot straight off to my lovely French canal, part of my beautiful French holiday a couple of years ago. No, didn't want to do that. That was silly. Look, if black and white were all about screen and multiply, overlay is about 50%. And the most simple thing you can do with overlay on some pictures is make a contrast. Ordinarily, I'd absolutely want to go and make a curves adjustment layer, maybe oomph the up with a famous S-shaped curve. That looks absolutely fine. Totally happy with that. I don't know what this projector looks like. It's looking great down here. Actually, it doesn't look too bad there. So I could go and make an adjustment layer to oomph the contrast, but sometimes all a picture needs, I'm going to duplicate the layer. All a picture needs is to go into the overlay mode to give it some contrast as well. What does overlay do? Overlay oomphs the black, it oomphs the white the other way, but for the greys, it doesn't do anything at all, and that's the beauty of overlay, is that it ignores grey, but it does contrast to that. There's many uses of overlay which we're now going to approach, but that was the basic idea of the overlay blending mode. Second one we're going to have a go at, very simply, is I've got a tree, and all I feel that it needs is a bit of orangey dappled sunlight, and maybe it's blue, I don't know. I'm going to go and create for myself a new fill layer on top, and it's simply going to be some gorgeous, fantastic, sunny orange. That's great. Again, overlay to the rescue. I simply want, as all blending modes do, comparing the two layers. If I instantly overlay, it gives this lovely orange glow, because of course it's not doing any orange where the black is, it's not doing any orange where the white is, but it's giving me this thing. Okay, totally agree that it's over the top, but all of course I need to do is add myself some kind of, again, can I get it black to white or white to black? Some kind of mask. Oh, there we go, look, I did it first time. So I've added a mask simply to say, if everyone is familiar with masking, I've added a mask to say where the white is, make the golden effect appear, where the black is, make the golden effect not appear. And so by adding a mask and fiddling around, I can do whatever I like. I've created my sunny morning with the overlay mode. And of course, I just wanted to point out that the lovely thing about the fill gradient is that you can just keep changing the color and getting a different effect, but the overlay mode will constantly only make the effect happen on black and white. So again, a nice little technique with overlay, and I'm going to keep going because overlay is a smashing blending mode. The next one we're going to do is very simple. I've got a graphic. It's going to be the London Monument, and all I want to do is I want to color it up. So now, oh, that was good. Now what we want to do is think through screen, overlay, and multiply. I'm going to do the same deal. I want to give myself in the first instance just some kind of new fill. I don't care what. Oh, red looks lovely. Yep. So what's going to happen if I make it multiply, everyone? Oh, sorry. Thank you. Fiddle, fiddle, fiddle. What's going to happen if I make it multiply? Everything that's black is going to get added to everything that's red. That's cool. That's the multiply in action. What was white just gets the red added to it. Multiply is additive. What am I going to get if I change it to screen? I'm going to get white gets ignored in screen, but anything that's black, the red gets added. So again, some simple graphic effects just with blending modes, never a problem to fiddle. What's going to happen with overlay? That's the one that only affects the grays. So I get this lovely other posterized idea that black stays black, white stays white, but any of the grays in overlay mode will be multiplied up into red. So I get this lovely idea of that. So just by fiddling with your blending modes, multiply, screen, or the contrasty ones, overlay, we can get lots of effects going. Right, where are we? We're going to, oops, I should have closed that, doesn't matter. Overlay can also be used to just do a couple of things. Does everyone get the idea that that, should have had it like that, that is the picture? What I've done is I've gone and added a couple of words which are now clear like so. Want to obviously make it slightly more realistic. Loads of things we could do. I could take the opacity down. That's definitely going to make it look like it's kind of on the train a bit, but it is very solid compared to this, which has definitely got the texture on it. Yeah. So the bottom line is, again, what's overlay blending mode going to do in this example? It's just going to let a bit of 50% grey show through. So overlay in terms of distressing here, really quite nice to make it realistic. Yep. Of course, we could blur it. We could do any kind of fiddles to make it better. But overlay, an instant one-click solution to distressing, another fantastic method for working. I'll close that down. And I'll close that down. Right, I don't know if people do much sharpening, but when we go and take, who I'm going to go and get Moz. There's Moz. He's quite blurred, and the most common thing people will want to do is go filter, sharpen, unsharp mask, and start fiddling. And there we go, I'm able to sharpen it up, no problem. The only problem is it does sharpen everything. And what I might want to do is only sharpen the white bits and the black bits in the edges, but I don't want to sharpen the greys in between. Same deal. I'm going to duplicate the layer, and I'm going to go straight in to overlay. No, I'm not going to go straight into overlay. What am I talking about? I'm going to go straight into making it a high pass filter. Other, high pass, that makes it grey, and by adjusting the slider, what I hope everyone can see is the high pass filter gives you edges, and that's what I need for sharpening. So the high pass filter in this case has shown me some blacks, shown me some whites, but in the middle it's not done much. Where I've got greys, I know the overlay blending mode isn't going to work. Where I've got blacks and whites, I know it is. So I simply am going to go to overlay as a blending mode, and instantly I have this idea that I can sharpen. I hope everyone can see it because it's quite subtle. I can use the overlay high pass sharpen method rather than mucking around with the actual pixels. Of course, the beauty of this is the original is still there, so one, again, if one needed to, one could mask all kinds of things, whereas sharpening the image, it's not really going to work. So there we go. Sharpening done. Let's have a quick look at something else. What we might want to do is we might want to do some enhancement of this. if everyone knows dodge and burn, I'm going to go and find my dodge tool. It's just a saxophone on an empty layer. Well, when I start lightening the light bits with dodge, it's okay. It's not bad, but does everyone see it kind of really quite makes a bit of a mess of things? You're welcome to go and try a burn to darken things up. Number one, it's not great. Number two, it's totally destructive because I'm working on the background layer. Yes, of course, I could have duplicated the layer and changed the opacity. No big deal. But, and you know, within reason, not too bad. I'm going to go into history and just go back a sec to simply say the overlay mode, again, has possibilities with dodging and burning. I'm going to create myself a new layer, and I'm going to go and fill it with 50% grey, which we know does absolutely nothing in, and there it is, does absolutely nothing in overlay mode. So when I go to overlay, I really don't get much at all. But what I'm able to do now, if everyone can remember, is I'm simply able to brush some black or some white, and I'm going to make it a big brush, and I'm going to reduce its opacity all the way down to something really subtle like 18, and I'm just going to brush some black. I'm going to brush some black in. I'm going to brush some white in. I'll make the brush a bit smaller and brush in some highlights. And I hope what everyone can see is that all I've really done is brush black and white here. And if I wanted to, or rather if I did make it too clunky, I'm going to make it splodgy like so. Yep, if I overdo it, I always have the ability to blur this whole layer. I'll blur it just slightly. So I smooth out the blend. So the idea is that I'm able to fiddle with dodging and burning on an individual, separate, independent layer using the overlay mode. As I say, overlay, can't get enough of it, and that's pretty good. I've got some steel. I'm going to do the absolute classic steel effect. We'll make it bigger. Oop, didn't really want to do that. We're going to make it bigger. Stop, go away. I might drag it down a bit and be very naughty. Overlay mode, what's it going to do? Of course, it's going to show through the black and white of the steel like so. So far, pretty straightforward, but not a problem. It's just a quick way of showing it through. What I really would like to do, however, is add myself some kind of, let's say, outer bevel. So I'm going to bevel and emboss. I'm going to go outer bevel on you. I might go, actually chisel hard is fine. We're going to take it nice and big. This is all set up. And ordinarily, when you come to these blending mode controls, what you normally get is, by default, you get screen and white for your highlight mode, which is that round there. We get multiply and black for that one round there. Not really a problem. I'll just adjust the light slightly, I think. No, not too much, but that's okay. And what I'm really after is the idea, I'll zoom in, is the idea that actually I want the steel texture to look much more like it's supposed to be there. So here's the thing. If we go for overlay mode on the two effects, we get the ability to, and I'm going to go for overlay on this one, but reduce it slightly. We get the idea that now we can make the actual bevels look like they're cast in steel as well, as opposed to the default black and white. So again, my bevel effect looks much more like it's actually been cut out of steel. The middle of the letter is not a problem, of course, but I've got overlay not only on the steel effect, but overlay on the blending options as well. Right. Let's just have a quick trawl through the other blending modes. I'm going to open the delightful Halle Berry. I'm actually going to go and make her a black and white for a sec. So I think what we'll do first of all is we'll add a black and white filter. We'll then go and add a new fill layer. Again, beautiful colored gold, looks good to me. But I'm going to copy this color, this is not part of the technique, but I just wanted to remind myself what this color is. I'm going to copy the hex value of the color. I'm then going to create myself a new layer, simply to put a little strip of that color at the top of the new layer, so that when we go into the, no, I haven't put it in the color yet. When we go into the blending modes, and then finally I will fill that with that. When we go into the blending mode, deselect, of the fill layer, we'll be able to just compare what the effects are. So let's remind ourselves, multiply did that. It got rid of, just did an undo. Oh, I've got my stupid thing on. Sorry, everyone. Multiply adds the color. Yes, I think there's a fair enough color fidelity with the actual color that I chose. It's not too bad. Does everyone see that the earrings and the lips, everything gets multiplied? Let's trawl through them. And this is the bit that everyone, I think, has ever, if they know Photoshop, has played with, and just, it's random. By the way, does everyone know that if you go to the Move tool, you can go Shift plus to shuffle through these? So I'm going to go back up to normal. I'm going to go Shift plus to go to dissolve. No, I'm not. Hello. Should be able to. Not letting me do it anymore. I'm going to go to darken. So darken makes it very green. Try Shift plus. Oh, it stopped working. How about that? Multiply was the one that looks fairly faithful to the original color, but not too bad. Color burn definitely gives you more contrast, but what I would point out for color burn, everyone, is look, the white bits of the earrings and the lips, by the way, are absolutely, the white highlights are white. So a tiny deal about color burn is it will leave white completely white and black completely black. I quite like color burn. Again, it's very green compared to that. Linear burn is the one I think that's most faithful in terms of color. So these are all just variations of how the things go together, and no one ever uses darker color, obviously. And I could shuffle through screen and so on, but everyone hopefully gets the idea that we have this business of being able to use blending modes to make subtle additions of color rather than anything else. I'm going to keep going with, if everyone's okay. Right, the idea, of course, that we have frequency separation, and frequency separation is a complex use of blending modes, but all I'm going to do and rattle through it in, God, it's 11:25, rattle through it very quickly is duplicate both layers. I'm going to, let's make sure I get it right, I'm going to blur this layer, and not too much, like so. And then in the top layer, I'm simply going to go and apply the image using blending modes. We're going to apply the top to the bottom. Don't worry, it'll make sense when we get there. It's going to be subtract as a blending mode, 2 and 1 to 8. And what I hope everyone sees is we get exactly the same effect as we had with the high pass sharpen, i.e. it's done that stuff. What it's done, however, is it's changed all this stuff. And I'm going to go and make this linear light as a blending mode, and we're practically back to the beginning. Everyone should be staring at it going, what, he hasn't done anything yet, he's just mucked around with layers. But here's the thing, what we've separated out is the detail, which you can see in the layer 1 copy, which contains the pores of the skin, from the color, which is in the bottom layer. So here's the plan, which is if her skin needs a good bit of cosmetic makeup, for instance, I'm going to do myself a little selection. It's not a great one, but it doesn't matter. I might do another one and another one. They're a bit hard selection edges, so of course what we should do is go and feather it slightly. 5's good. I'm going to go on this layer, layer 1, because that's the layer with the blurry stuff. I could actually just make this slightly more, but whatever. I'll hide the, no, I'll leave the selection edges. And all we're going to do now is we're going to apply further blurring, and the idea with a frequency separation is that what you tend to find is that you are blurring up. Does everyone see it? You're blurring up the skin color, but you're leaving the texture behind, because the texture of the skin, the pores, is on the layer 1 copy, which is under linear light. So I get that idea that I'm able to smooth out skin. I'll go back to that one. That's what we had before. That's what we had after. I'll deselect. Before, after. No, can't do that. Of course I can't do that. All done with a matter of a linear light on a high pass filter versus the actual blurring. Frequency separation, everyone, well worth doing. If, by the way, we wanted to add some highlights, I'm going to go and add a new layer on top of this, and I'm simply going to go and brush some white. And I'm going to be quite crude about it. I haven't got much of an opacity, so let's whack it up slightly. Same deal. I'm going to brush some highlights on a new layer above her skin. And then I'm going to double click the layer, because it was just this idea about blending. This time we're going to blend the underlying layer. I want the white, which is in the top layer, to disappear according to the color of the skin below. So this time, I'm going to get it wrong, always get it wrong. I'm going to drag it in from that side, and as I drag it in, what you can see is the skin, the white disappears according to the coloring below. So all I really want to do now is split this with the Alt key, and now I have the ability to soften out my highlights. And as you can hopefully see, as I bring it forward and backwards, I get the idea that I can add white, not according to white splodge, but according to the pores of the skin above, by using a blending condition. I can knock it back, of course, or knock it up. There we go, a nice little bit of highlight added, and that's all it did. But it did it according to the skin, as opposed to, of course, what most people would do is get a white brush, try and knock the opacity down, and splodge a bit of white there. But they're not really doing anything other than building up layers of white, which is totally removing the pores of the skin, whereas on frequency separation, with a blending option, you're able to maintain the skin. Everyone can see, hopefully, the difference between pasting white on it and blending white into the layer below. Cool. How are we doing for time? Are we all right? Nobody knows. Okay, cool. It's 11:30. Is that good or bad? You're on next. What time are you expecting to go on? 11:30. Okay. Right, I'll shut up then. Listen, everyone, thank you so much for your attention. Blending modes, definitely worth looking at and playing with, but you've got to divert a bit of your time towards zapping them in and out. Thanks, everyone, and have a lovely day. Thank you.
Okay. Working?
No, not yet. Apologies, I won't hold you up any longer.
No, that's all right.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Technical hitch.
Okay, so just say something.
1, 2, 1, 2. Testing. 1, 2.
Perfect.
Good. There you go. The system works.
Okay, after you.
Okay. Hi, my name is Mark Gatter, and I'm here again. I seem to be doing this every year since like 2012, I think, is when I first started doing these. So I thought I'd revert to something fairly straightforward and not get into anything too esoteric, which means that my presentations don't work properly. So I thought, how about Photoshop masks? It's one of those areas where a lot of people, my experience is a lot of people get really stuck. They don't really know how to deal with masks. Masks are actually very easy, I think. If I get them wrong, I just sort of do them the other way, and then they tend to work. So I'll show you what I mean. There's 3 kinds, basically. There's layer masks, there's quick masks, and there's vector masks. So I guess, well, I hope you all know the difference between pixels and vector. Vector is infinitely scalable. Pixels definitely not infinitely scalable. If you make the pixels in an image visible, people just stop seeing the image. An example of that would be if you can remember seeing in a magazine or a newspaper, maybe recently, see the pixels. Any of you seen that? Do you remember what it's a picture of? Chances are you don't. Probably. Because when we see the pixels, we sort of think, pixels, we recognize that. But mentally, we stop seeing it as an image. The illusion breaks down. So the illusion is very important to maintain. This, I don't know why I started with this on the screen, but here it is anyway. This is a picture of Derwent Reservoir in Northumberland. I live about 20 miles west of Newcastle. And I go down to this place quite often, 2 or 3 times a week when I'm up there. And it's a beautiful, beautiful reservoir. So I took a photo of it, which actually looked like this. Just a JPEG. I could have shot it in RAW, but I shot this as a JPEG, and I thought, well, I'd like to fix that. I'd like to just use a couple of simple masks to bring it out a little more. So the first thing to me is too light. So I created a duplicate of the image by just selecting that layer and saying Command J, Control J on a Windows machine. There's my duplicate, and here's a mask next to it. Now I can select the image, which means I could paint on the image. So down here I could have colors for my color chips here in the toolbox. And I could paint on the image using colors. If I click on the mask over here, then the color chips revert to black and white, because a mask is only susceptible to levels of opacity. So in this case, white means you can't see through it, black means you can. That's as complicated as masks get. That's pretty straightforward. If you just remember that, and if you forget it, that's no big deal. You can just check it. White means you can't see it through it, black means you can. So in this case, the white on that mask, and all I did to create it, and I'll actually delete this and show you again. So oops, my layers window is partly off the screen. So I'm going to bin all these. There's my original image. Here's my copy, Command J. That's the layer mask icon down there. But before I get the layer mask, I'm going to convert this copy of the image so that the sky looks how I want it to look, perhaps. So I'm just going to do a quick levels adjustment, and I'm not going to bother to use adjustment layers, which means I can affect it later. I can turn it on and off. I'm just going to do a straight, destructive, actually affecting the pixels, levels adjustment like that. Drag the middle slider across. I'll close up the black there. So let's say I want the sky to look like that, but of course I don't want the foreground to look like that. So now I need a layer mask, like so. White means you can't see through it. White means you see this image in its entirety. But if I paint on the layer mask with a gradient going from white to black, where it's white I'll see this, and where it's black I'll see through to what's underneath. So there's the gradient tool, white to black, linear gradient. It's going to paint white first, so if I do something like that, now I can see straight through to what was underneath it. That's it. That's how complicated they are. So how about if now I wanted the foreground down here? I'm happy with the sky, but I'd like the foreground to be a little bit punchy, a little bit more contrasty. So I'm going to make another copy of the background layer, drag it up to the top this time. So now this image, this layer, is completely in the way of what's underneath it. And I'm going to make this foreground a little bit more contrasty by bringing in, and this time I will do an adjustment layer of curves. I don't know if you use curves. Curves is how you want to adjust for contrast. Don't use image adjustment, brightness and contrast, ever. Even Adobe recognizes it's very destructive. If you want to destroy an image, burn out the whites, burn in the blacks. Brightness and contrast is the tool for you. If you want to do it intelligently, you want to use curves instead. And what I normally do is I click in the middle of that line. Now if I drag that line up, left, but down, right, that's exactly like moving the middle slider in levels. But if I grab the line halfway down and pull into a slight S-bend, then I can add contrast to the image. See, that's brightening the brights. That's darkening the darks down here. And that makes my foreground look a lot more contrasty, maybe a little too much. How about like that? Now I don't want it to obscure the sky, so now I'm going to add another layer mask down here. And this time I'm going to paint it sort of the other way around. So I've got white down here and black up here. I can see through to this layer underneath, like so. So now I've got my this up here. So that's just improving on the original, which was to that, using a few simple masks. So that's layer masks. Layer masks are great. They're really useful. If you want to make selective adjustments to an image, they're very useful indeed. And you can do other fun stuff with them as well. So I think I'm finished with doing Reservoir right now. Tell you, it's rough living in a place like that. Do most of you live in London? Excuse me. I grew up in London. It took me years to get out. I always had this feeling I was going to starve by the side of the road if I left London. Funny thing is we don't, you know. I'm still alive, I'm still getting enough to eat, so it is safe to move out of London. So let's see if I can find something else. Oh yes, let's do sheep. Pixel masks. Lonely sheep. Isn't that sweet? So this picture was sent to me by some friends of mine who were trekking in Scotland. I used to have several sheep. I had a farm in Wales till a couple of years ago. So I had a bunch of sheep. They're great fun. They never were going to end up on a plate. They're rescue sheep. They're going to live out their lives in, you know, and they did. They had a great time. So two friends of mine went up to Scotland. They're trekking around in Scotland. This sheep followed them for 3 days. Every time they opened their tent, there's the sheep standing there watching them. So in the end, they sent a photograph of it, and it was like a postcard to my sheep, like sort of wish you were here kind of thing. Anyway, the sky is, isn't it? Scottish summer. So I've created a fake sky in Photoshop. Actually, let's do this right from scratch. So I'll make a new document. And I'm going to go for that, but I'll change it instead to centimeters. 30 centimeters by 30. 150 dpi, that should be plenty. RGB, white, great. There it is. Now, it looks smaller than the original image, but don't be fooled. That's showing at 33%, this at 100%, so obviously it's much bigger. And I'm going to choose white and a light blue. Now, the quickest way to choose white is to press the letter D and then press the letter X. Now I've got white as my foreground color. D is default, X switches them. I'm going to click on the black chip and choose a sort of a shade of blue that I might expect to see up in the sky, something like that. And then I'll just go Filter, Render, Clouds. Okay, so that doesn't look much like a sky, does it? But it might in a minute. I'm going to drag that into this image, and I'm going to hold down the Shift key as I do it. Now, if you drag another image in holding down the Shift key, the result is that that's now centered in the frame. So if I do Command T, oh, I'm not zoomed out enough. Let's do that. There, you can see that's the boundaries of the sky that I've just brought in, and it's centered on the original image. That's quite useful sometimes. It's not essential, but it's quite useful. I'm going to drag this handle up and drag this one down a bit. So now I've got this sort of linear appearance to the cloudy effect. Then I'm going to, without resolving that, go to Image, Transform, Perspective. I can drag this corner in, and the other corner moves in as well. And I can drag this corner out, and I'm starting to get some kind of appearance of a sky. So you can sort of create fake skies in Photoshop. But I'd really like this to be behind that, to be in the mountains behind that. Now I could use a blending mode. If I use a blending mode of darken, it'll pop that behind the mountains, like so. But there's little bits of blue showing through, which I want to avoid. So I'm going to set that back to normal. I'm going to do it instead of using a mask. So I'll turn that layer off for a minute so I can see this one. And then get the Quick Mask tool, which is, where's it gone? There. And just drag that through the mountains and the sheep and the lake lock. There we go. So now I've got a selection of my foreground. Now if I inverse that, Command-Shift-I, Control-Shift-I on Windows, go back to this layer, turn it back on again, and now click on the layer mask icon. That cuts all the foreground out of that image, courtesy of the mask, and it puts the sky in behind it. There's no little bits of blue showing through, because where the mask is black, nothing can show through. Nothing from this layer can show through. Everything from the layer beneath can show through, so I don't have any bits of blue left. Now, of course, skies tend to get lighter down towards the horizon. So I need to put in some Scotch mist here. So I'll choose white to transparent, linear again. Hold down the Shift key because that constrains it to 45-degree increments and something like that. No, I didn't really want to do that. I meant to do that on a new layer, not on the mask, sorry. So I'll drag it up like that, and of course, instantly it looks like it's a really severe case of mist coming in. If I merge that down, it's going to adopt the mask with it, like that. So now I've got my white merged down into the mask, or I could have instead decided, okay, well I want to duplicate the mask on this layer. If I hold down the Alt key and drag, I just copy the mask onto the white layer, and that means I can adjust the opacity of the white to transparency without affecting the sky underneath. So that's another really good use of masks. Okay, I think that's enough sheep for today. Here's a really kind of classic use of layer mask. So these are two pictures that, by the way, if any of you ever sit in on one of my Photoshop courses, you'll see these pictures again. I was once taking a walk with a friend and a dog. We walked down onto this beach near Swanage on the south coast. I turned right, took a picture of them, and then I turned left, took this picture. Nothing remarkable about these two pictures, except in this one, all the data is in the right, and in this one, all the data is in the lower left. So they're a perfect candidate for a mask. That's the only good thing about them, really. So if I get the Move tool again and drag this one onto this one, and again I'll hold down the Shift key, because of course, if the Shift key means that the incoming image is centered on the target, both these pictures taken within seconds of each other. They're exactly the same size. They're now a perfect fit. And I've got them both here in the layers window. So if I want to create a mask here, I'll put a layer mask on that image, the top image, and then again get the gradient tool and set it to foreground to background. Now I want all this to show through, so I'm going to paint white up in the top left. That way. Going down to black in the bottom right. So I'll start up here and drag down to about here. And really easy. That's how you can merge images together. So you can sort of fade one image into another. The trick with masks is usually finding the images. Actually putting a mask on it there's nothing to it. It's dead easy. If you've never used masks, I really encourage you to do it. If you decide, well, you don't really like that, just repaint it, click and drag again. Every time you click and drag, because you're doing a foreground to background painting effect, blend on the mask, it repaints the entire canvas every time you do it, like so. Here's another example where the two images don't fit. Now that's Mount McKinley, which is the tallest mountain in the continental USA. And that's St. Catherine's Chapel near Abbotsbury, close to Weymouth on the south coast. There's this dinky little chapel, it's tiny, and it's up on a hill, and the other side of the hill is the English Channel, so it's hundreds of years old, and sometimes when I've seen it, I've sort of tried to imagine the effort needed to build this thing is just beyond belief. So I'm going to drag Mount McKinley in and drop it into the English Channel behind the chapel. So, move till this time I'm going to bother to hold down the shift key, because these are not taken at the same time. So they don't fit. If you do a free transform on an image that's got a lot of detail in and you spread it out, all that you're really doing is throwing more pixels at that same finite amount of detail. And very quickly, it gets this sort of slightly porridge-looking appearance to it. It's not satisfactory at all. If you want to enlarge an image, go online and look for a piece of software called Perfect Resize. And it's made by a company called On1. I've got it on this. It's fantastic. You can enlarge an image up to 1,000% intelligently. Now, I've never taken it that far, but I have done 400, 450% quite a few times. And it uses, I don't know how, fractal mathematics, which I don't really understand at all. But if it thinks that should be a sharp edge, it keeps it sharp, even if it's really increasing the size of the image. It's really good. And incredibly cheap. It's like $90 for the whole thing. And that's it. It's yours forever after that. So I'm going to just stretch this one out, because there are one or two kinds of image where you can do this and it doesn't really matter. Sky is one, because clouds are soft, so it doesn't matter if they end up looking soft. They were soft to begin with. And for some reason, mountains work as well. I'll resolve that. I didn't even scale that proportionally. I just stretched it to fill the sky. There's Mount McKinley. Quick aside. Imagine a map of the continental USA. What do you think are the northernmost, southernmost, easternmost, and westernmost states in the USA? And most people will say, well, Alaska's the northernmost. Yep. And then southernmost, they're thinking Florida. And then eastern and western, they're thinking, we've got like Maine and Nantucket over there. What state's that in? I can't remember. Vermont, you know. It's actually Alaska for 3 of them, and the other one's Hawaii. Hawaii is the southernmost, and the other 3 are Alaska. It's the northernmost. It's also the westernmost, because the Aleutian Islands go right out to the international date line, and they cross it, so they're also the easternmost. Most people don't know that. You can score money off your friends with that one. Okay, so now I want to selectively get rid of this image so I can see the chapel beneath it. If I want to get rid of the mountain down here, that's where I've got to paint black, fading to white. So again, I'm going to get the gradient tool, choose foreground to background, add a layer mask, because I nearly forgot that. And if I start just above the bottom edge of the image with black, then it'll be black south of that as well, which means I will not be able to see the bottom edge in the result. However, I've got white as the foreground color, so I'm going to start about here and drag down to about there. And there's Abbotsbury in the background. Now, I don't know if you can see, I can see very slight fuzz of blue in the chapel there, which quite often happens because this image is not totally transparent at that point. It's partially transparent, but not totally. But that's easy. I've got to paint the chapel black on the mask. So if I go to this layer, get the quick selection tool again, drag it through all this stuff, go to the mask, and if you want to fill an area with the background color, that's Command backspace, and if you want to fill it with the foreground color, it's Alt backspace, Command backspace, and on the mask, now if I hold down the Alt key and click on it so you can see it, you can see the silhouette of St. Catherine's Chapel. Very difficult, by the way, to see a mask as a visible image, but if you Alt click on it, that works. So that's now I've put Mount McKinley in the background. Now if I switch to foreground to transparent for that gradient, and then make black the foreground color, then I can continue to add to the mask. I'm not repainting the whole thing, I'm just adding to it selectively. Whoops. So let's see. No, that's, I didn't switch. There we go. So I can add the sky in a little bit if I want. Okay, so that's layer masks. They're really useful. Now, quick masks are slightly different. With quick masks, I'm tending to try and add an effect as a gradient. So I'd kind of divide it up a little bit. I'll open this one called Pathway. This is a pathway just outside Dorchester, where I used to live. Beautiful path, and that sort of light, bright spot at the end of it, it's always a little bit magic. It's always trying to get there, and it always recedes, you know. And I wanted to take a photograph that sent your eyes straight down the path. And I never really managed it with a camera, but I managed it in Photoshop. All you have to do for a quick mask, which allows you to apply an effect as a gradient, is press the letter Q. Now when you do that, the layer goes pink because you just changed something. You've added a new channel by pressing the letter Q, and it's called quick mask. And the idea is then, while that channel is active, then you create your mask. So I'm going to use a radial gradient this time, foreground to background, and I'll click in the middle there and drag down to the bottom, like that. And I get this fuzzy, warm glow. And I think they use red because in printing, commercial printing, red is used as a masking material, which means that things like plates are insensitive to red. And I think they're just trying to make printers feel at home. You can change the color of it, but if you're ever going to have a printer use your machine, don't. I want to load that as a selection and then get rid of that channel, which all sounds a little complicated, but all you have to do is press the letter Q again, and it does it for you. And you can see I've got two selection lines here. One's the edge of the image, then there's this circle inside it. The space between those is what's actually going to be affected. This area in the center is not part of the selection. And that line does represent a gradient, but you can't really represent a gradient as a dotted line. So Photoshop knows. Now if I go up to the filter menu and go down to blur and Gaussian blur, which is your bog standard blur, there it is, just a little bit, and it softens the image out towards the edges. I'll OK that and then always get rid of the selection because it's getting in the way of what you can see. But now you can see the image more clearly, much more clearly, in fact, than you could a moment ago. And that blur in the foreground now produces the result that I wanted. There is nothing satisfactory for your eye in the foreground, so it goes zinging off down the path. They're really handy. Vector masks. I hardly ever use vector masks. I'm kind of wondering why I bothered to include vector masks. Here we go. Vector mask example. Okay. I've already got a selection of the sky made here. I just used forget which, and made a selection of the sky. So I'm just going to load that. If you want to load the selection on a shape, you Command or Control click on it like so. So there it is. And then if I want to convert that into a path, because of course and say, now you can down here to turn a selection into a path. Don't. Always say make work path, because this is the difference. If you click on the icon at the bottom of the window, it's using a tolerance of 2 pixels. And that means the result is very sloppy compared to what you actually selected. If you use half a pixel, that's going to be really good. Anything from 0.5 to 0.8, it'll be pretty faithful to what you originally did. So if I now say OK with that, there's essentially what I've done. There's my path. Now, was I intended to inverse that? I think I wanted to inverse that actually. Yeah, I did. So I'm going to undo a bit of this. OK, let's select that again. Now I'm going to inverse it, Command-Shift-I. Then I'll make a path. Make work path. 0.5, OK. So that's the bottom part of the image. So that's now essentially a vector mask, what will be in a second. I'm going to create, I think, a white layer beneath that in a second. First of all, I'll go Layer, Vector Mask, Current Path. So this area is masked, it's protected. This area up here was not masked, it's not protected, it's gone. And I can now drop whatever I wanted into that. Now the thing with vector masks, if I've got that selected instead of the image, if I go to the Properties window and double-click on it, click on that, that's a vector mask, and I've got density and feathering. I can do both of those. Okay, so I'm going to feather those in a minute. First of all, I'm just going to bring in a new sky. So I think I've got it here. There we go. There's a fake sky. No, I don't want that one. I'm going to bring in another one. Sorry. Do-de-do-de-do-do-do. Where'd I put it? Painted sky. That'll do. Oil paint. So then I'll get the Move tool and drag that in. And I'll put it just down here. Oh, go. Turn on the mask. Let's see. Oh, I shouldn't have. I'll put white behind it, I guess. Quite like that. Command backspace fills that with white. Then I'll select the mask and we'll feather it a bit. Don't know what else to do with that. Anyway, you can't really do that with a layer mask. You can affect the density of the layer mask easily. You've got an opacity window in the layers window. But feathering it, now that's a little different. You'd have to make a selection and soften the edge. Whereas with a vector mask, you can just feather it straight away. Quite like that. There's one other image in here that I thought I had in Pixel Mask. There it is. Cool. Don't know if any of you saw the little bit of blurb about me in the program, but it said something about that I like to grow vegetables. This is where I grow them. If you want to ask me any question about growing vegetables, please feel free at the end of this. Anyway, this is a photograph taken in polytunnel, which means you've got a little piece of California right there in your back garden. And I wanted to turn it into a sort of drawn image. Now I've got some layer comps here that I've already set up. I don't know if you use layer comps, but if you've ever got to show somebody a variety of designs that are by layers in a single image, layer comps is good way of doing it. Set that up first. Otherwise, when you're turning layers off, turning layers on, you're going to make mistakes and you'll feel like an idiot. So I've got all these layer comps already made. So that's the original image. Now each one of those that I click on, it's going to turn the appropriate layers on and off for me, because that's what I had when I made the layer comp. So this one is a duplicate layer that's been is another duplicate of the desaturated layer, and it's set to a blending mode of color dodge, which mostly means it looks completely white. Now if you want to create a sketch appearance, you could do a Gaussian blur on that layer. That's the result of a Gaussian blur. It's an interaction between that layer and the one beneath it. Or you could, and this is much better, you go to filter, other, minimum, and you get something like this. That's beautiful. That looks like a really detailed pencil sketch, like I spent hours and hours on it. Then I'm going to selectively color it in, and that's where a mask comes in. So that's a result of copying the original layer, dragging it right to the top of the stack, and making a layer mask on that layer, and painting it black to begin with. Now if you do that, it means you can see straight through it. It's not doing anything at all to all the layers underneath. You can see straight through. But if you then paint on that layer using a large, soft, white brush with quite a low opacity, so you just build it up bit by bit, you can paint in areas that you want to have in color and get something like this out of it, which is kind of nice, I think. So I think that kind of covers what I wanted to cover with masks. And I've probably gone a little faster than I thought I was going to go, so I may have a few minutes more than I thought I was going to have. Anyone got any questions about masks?
Yeah, how it's possible to apply more masks to the same
Yeah,
layer?
you can have layer masks on several different layers. They don't fight. So yeah, you can do that.
No, but yeah, of course, but which way I can apply and make them working? Different masks applied to the same layer.
Oh, different masks on the same layer, then they're going to fight. Which one of them's in control of what you're seeing?
Like gradient together with defined masks.
With a
Together with the defined masks, with defined edge, together with a gradient, for example, in order to have, I don't know, I think about the shape of a man, which is disappearing on the top or on the bottom. And so I want to keep two masks together applied to the same layer. Is that possible?
no. You would be better off making duplicate layers, and each one has a mask, and you give it a particular treatment, like that picture of Durant Reservoir.
Okay.
That's
Is it
right.
possible to apply masks to groups?
Yeah, you can do that. Yeah. Sure. Anyone else? Anyone got questions about how to grow aubergines? Tomatoes. I used to live in the States, and I met some guys once who had shown a farmer how he could grow a tomato this big. Doesn't seem possible, does it? I'll just tell you quickly, this has nothing to do with Photoshop at all, but you might like to know. You grow one tomato plant, and you, after it's about that tall, you lay it down in a trench, so just the top of it's poking up, and then you let it grow a bit more. Then it grows to about that, then you lay it down again, and you end up with a tomato plant that's like 8 feet long, but this tall at the end, and then you let it grow. All of that stalk turns into a root, essentially, and it's soaking up nutrients. So there's a whole lot of juice going into that one little growth at the end. Then you just let one flower develop into a tomato, and that's the result. Good luck with your gardening. Yeah. Oh, it's great. I mean, I tried it with a different variety of tomato. I have some friends in Catalonia, up in the foothills of the Pyrenees. I went over there to see them a few years ago. They took me to see a friend of theirs, Luis. He's a market gardener. We had a great time. He didn't speak any English. I didn't speak any Catalan. We had a great time. And at the end of the day, I passed some kind of test. Somehow. He grows them, his father grew them, his grandfather grew them, he doesn't know anyone else who grew them. And he hands me a film canister filled with seeds. So I took them home and grew them in Wales. And I ended up with a monster version of what he'd given me. And I sent him a photograph of it. He couldn't believe it. Absolutely couldn't believe it. So yeah, it does work. It's very effective. I don't know anything else you can do that with, but tomatoes, yeah. There's another trick is, you grow them to about that tall, and you plant them so only that bit's showing above the ground. The rest of it becomes root that adds nutrients to the rest of the plant. I know almost as many tips about gardening as I do about Photoshop. Any questions about masks or vegetables or sheep or chickens? Okay.
Excuse me, you said Photoshop. How much is it, did you say?
How
much is Photoshop? You pay for it, right?
I don't know, because I get it as part of the Creative Cloud. And I get teachers' rates on Creative Cloud, which is worth doing.
I think Adobe do allow you to buy a single app a month.
They do.
£25, I believe. Occasionally they do special offers on the whole Creative Suite, and Photoshop Elements is available for free, I believe, or you pay a small.
Do you know how much the whole suite is regular price? About 50 something, isn't it?
It's more than that. It can be variable. In my personal case, I had a couple of Adobe products which I was using and enjoying, and then they offered me a great 1-year contract on the whole lot for not so much money. So it was very good, and well, yeah, really brilliant actually.
Cool.
I paid £38 a month.
Just for Photoshop?
No, for the suite.
That's good, yeah. I know that there's a deal they do with Photoshop and Lightroom. And I think it's cheaper than buying one of them on their own, I think.
With my deal, I have Premiere, Audition, Dreamweaver, just like the whole thing. And it's, not much money.
Yeah.
It is incredible, actually.
It is.
What you can do.
Yeah, and the really nice thing about Creative Cloud, if any of you are still on a disk version of Photoshop or any of these, Creative Cloud, yes, you're paying every month, but as soon as Adobe think of something new, they build it in and you get it like the next day. So there's always upgrades. It's a really good way to go. I've been very happy with Creative Cloud. And I'm not just waving the flag for Adobe, because I tend not to do that. If I think they've done something wrong, I'll tell everyone they've done something wrong. So, okay, well, thank you very much for your time, and see you again.